You're listening to part 2 of the viral love story, I Need a Husband by Tomorrow. Things change when feelings get involved. The night after the board hearing, I woke up to Claire shaking beside me, her breath fast and uneven like she was running in her sleep. The room was dark, except for moonlight sliding across the floor. I reached for her without thinking, my hand finding hers, grounding her back into the quiet of the house. She opened her eyes and looked at me like she was checking if I was real. For the first time since all this started, fear sat between us with no lawyers to hold it back. She did not cry. Claire rarely did. Instead, she sat up and stared at the wall where my parents' old wedding photo still hung. I had never moved it. She asked me, in a soft voice, if I ever wished I had left this place. I told her the truth. That some nights I imagined a life where I was not always fixing something broken. That most days I stayed because leaving would feel like losing my parents all over again. She listened like every word mattered. When she finally leaned her head on my shoulder, it felt less like comfort and more like trust. The next morning, the farm woke us early. Cattle lowed in the distance and wind tapped the windows like it always did. Claire surprised me by pulling on boots before I even asked. She followed me out to the barn, the cold biting at our hands as we worked side by side. We did not talk much, but the silence felt different now. It was shared, not separate. News moved fast after that. Reporters circled the road more often. Drones hovered too close to the fields. Claire handled calls from the board while I handled the land. Still, there were moments that felt almost normal. Coffee shared on the porch, her laugh when the dog stole her glove. The way she leaned into me without thinking when the wind picked up. Those small things scared me more than the threats. They felt permanent. Then, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name written clean and careful. Inside was a warning. It said the fire was only the beginning. It said accidents happen to farmers all the time. Claire read it twice, her jaw tight. She wanted to call the sheriff right away. I told her we would, but first we needed to lock down the farm. Cameras. Lights, neighbors on alert. She agreed, but I could see the guilt trying to creep back in. I stopped it before it took hold. I told her she was not the storm. She was standing in it with me. That evening, she insisted on cooking again. This time she did better. We ate at the small table by the window, watching the sky turn orange over the fields. She asked me about my parents. Not the facts, but the feelings. What they were like when no one was watching. I told her how my mom sang off-key while baking and how my dad fixed things that did not need fixing just to feel useful. Claire smiled and said my stubbornness made sense now. It was the first time she talked about a future like she could see one. The calm did not last. 2 days later, a board member called with a condition. To fully close the audit, they wanted proof we were living like a real couple. Not staged photos. Not legal statements. They wanted time. Shared appearances. A public commitment. Claire hung up and stared at me like the ground had shifted again. She said we could refuse, that she would fight it. But I saw the fear she tried to hide. This was her grandfather's legacy on the line. I told her I would do it. Not for the board. For us. The words surprised both of us. She asked if I was sure. I said yes before doubt could catch up. That night, we agreed to attend the county fair together. Public. Unavoidable. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone. If there was going to be a test, it would be there. The day of the fair, Claire stood in the bedroom doorway, holding a simple dress, unsure like she did not belong in this version of life. I told her she did. She smiled and reached for my hand. When we arrived, heads turned. Whispers followed. Cameras flashed. I felt her fingers tighten around mine. And instead of pulling away, I held on harder. We walked through the crowd together, ate fried food, laughed at bad music. For a moment, it almost felt real in the easiest way. Then Ryan showed up. He stood near the livestock pens, smiling like he had been invited. He congratulated us loudly, his words sharp with doubt. He asked questions meant to trap us. Where did we meet? Who proposed? Why the rush? Claire answered calmly, but I saw her shoulders stiffen. When he leaned in too close, I stepped between them. I told him to leave. The crowd went quiet. Ryan smiled wider and said this was not over. That night, back at the farm, Claire broke down for the first time. Not loud, just quiet tears she tried to hide. I held her until they stopped. I told her whatever came next, she would not face it alone. She looked up at me like she wanted to believe it. Then, she kissed me. It was not planned. Not careful. It was full of fear and relief, and something we had been avoiding naming. When we pulled apart, neither of us spoke. We did not need to. The line we had been dancing around was gone. And somewhere outside, beyond the fields and the threats, something new had begun. The morning after the fair felt heavier than the days before it. The kiss stayed in my head like a question I did not know how to ask out loud. Claire moved through the house quietly, careful in a way that told me she felt it too. Nothing had been decided, yet everything had changed. The deal we once hid behind no longer protected us from what we were feeling. She left early for a video call with the board, her voice calm but firm as she spoke from the dining table. I stayed outside, repairing a fence that did not really need fixing, just to keep my hands busy. When she finally came out, her face was tight. Ryan had filed another motion. This one was personal. He claimed she was being manipulated, that I was isolating her, that the farm was unsafe after the fire. He wanted her removed temporarily from all company decisions. It was a move meant to break her. She asked me if she should go back to Lincoln for a few days to calm things down. The idea hit harder than I expected. I told her she had to do what was right for her, but my chest tightened at the thought of her leaving. She saw it. She always did. Instead of answering, she asked me what I wanted. No one had asked me that in a long time. I told her the truth. I wanted her here. Not because of the board or the marriage, but because the farm felt right with her in it. She nodded slowly, like she was choosing something difficult but necessary. She stayed. That decision brought consequences fast. 2 nights later, someone cut the power to the property. The house went dark just after midnight. Claire reached for me in the black without hesitation. We moved through the house together, checking doors and windows, the flashlight shaking slightly in her hand. Nothing was missing, nothing broken, just a warning. We sat on the couch until dawn, backs against each other, listening to the quiet. When the lights came back on, Claire made a call. She pulled strings she had avoided using before. Security was installed. The sheriff drove by more often. Neighbors showed up with tools and food, no questions asked. They stood with us in a way that reminded me why my parents had loved this place. Claire watched it all with something like awe. She said power should look like this. People choosing to protect each other. As the days passed, the board demanded more appearances, interviews, photos, proof that we were not hiding. Claire asked me before everyone. I said yes each time, even when it felt like we were inviting the storm closer. During one interview, a reporter asked when we fell in love. Claire looked at me instead of the camera. I answered without thinking. I said love does not always start loud. Sometimes it starts when someone stays. That night she told me she was scared of losing herself, not the company. Herself. I told her I was scared of losing her too, but not to Ryan or the board. To the version of life she might return to if this ended. She took my face in her hands and told me she did not want to go back. She wanted forward. The pressure reached a breaking point a week later. Ryan leaked false documents, suggesting our marriage was already failing. Headlines spread fast. Claire's name was dragged through it. She shut herself in the office for hours, fighting fires I could not see. When she finally came out, she looked exhausted in a way sleep would not fix. I asked her to come with me. No phones, no calls, just the fields. We drove out to the far edge of the property, where the land opens wide and quiet. We sat on the hood of the truck as the sun went down, the sky painted in deep red and gold. She rested her head on my shoulder and said she did not know how to do this without me anymore. I told her she would not have to. The words felt solid. Real. When we went back inside, she did not return to the guest room. She stayed. Not because we planned it. Because it felt honest. We did not rush. We talked. We laughed. We admitted fears we had been carrying alone. When we finally slept, it was peaceful in a way I had not felt since before my parents died. The next morning, Claire woke before me. I found her standing by the window, looking out at the fields like she was memorizing them. She said Ryan had one last move. A final hearing. If she won, it would be over for good. If she lost, everything we had built together would be questioned. She asked me if I was ready for that kind of fight. I took her hand and told her I already was, because this was no longer about pretending. It was about choosing each other when it mattered most. The final hearing was set for Friday morning, 3 days away. The kind of time that stretches and tightens all at once. Claire spent those days preparing, like she always did, calm on the surface, fierce underneath. I saw it in the way she organized notes, made calls, and still found time to walk the fields with me at dusk. She said the land helped her think. I believed her. It helped me breathe. The night before we left for Lincoln, a storm rolled in fast. Wind bent the trees low, and rain hammered the roof like it wanted inside. The power flickered but stayed on. Claire sat at the kitchen table, papers spread out, eyes tired. I made coffee and set it in front of her. She looked up and smiled, a small one, but real. She said no matter what happened tomorrow, she was glad she had come to the farm. Glad she had found me. I told her the feeling was mutual, and for the first time, the words did not scare me. We drove to Lincoln before sunrise. The city felt loud after weeks of open space. The building where the hearing was held rose clean and sharp against the sky. Inside, everything echoed. Claire's team was already there, focused and ready. Ryan arrived last. He looked confident, relaxed, like this was already his victory. He nodded at Claire like they were still family. She did not return it. The board filed in. Faces serious. No warmth. This was business, and business had rules. Ryan spoke first. He painted a picture of manipulation and lies. He called the farm a cover. He called me a pawn. I stayed still, hands clenched under the table, letting Claire handle it. She always did. When it was her turn, she stood and told the truth again. She did not hide how it started. She explained the will, the pressure, the choice she had made. Then she talked about the fire, the threats, the way fear had tried to push her back into silence. She said she refused. She said power that crushes people is not power worth having. The room was quiet. Even Ryan stopped smiling. Then she asked to call me. I stood, heart pounding, and faced the board. They asked why I agreed. I told them about the farm, about my parents, about standing up to people like Ryan my whole life. I told them I did not marry Claire for money or influence. I married her because she showed up when things were burning and did not run. I said whatever this started as, it was real now. I could feel her eyes on me the whole time. Ryan interrupted. He laughed and said feelings do not make contracts valid. That was when Claire's lawyer stood and presented the final evidence. Updated reports, security footage, financial trails. Proof tying Ryan directly to the sabotage. The room shifted. Phones buzzed. Board members whispered. Ryan's face hardened, then cracked. The board recessed. Minutes stretched into an hour. Claire and I sat side by side, fingers barely touching, neither of us speaking. Whatever happened next would change everything. When the board returned, the decision was clear. Ryan was removed permanently. The marriage was recognized as valid. Claire retained full control. She did not celebrate. She turned to me and breathed out like she had been holding it for months. Outside, cameras waited, questions ready. Claire faced them head on. She spoke about transparency, about rebuilding trust, about choosing integrity over fear. When asked about me, she said I was her partner. Not just in name, in life. We drove back to the farm in silence, the good kind. When we arrived, the sky was wide and clear. Claire stepped out of the truck and looked around like she was seeing it for the first time. She said she wanted to stay. Not because she had to, because she wanted this life. With me. That night, we sat on the porch, the land quiet and steady. I realized the fight was over, but the choice was just beginning. Life did not return to normal after that. It became something better. Quieter in the ways that mattered, and fuller in ways I had forgotten were possible. The threats stopped. The reporters faded away. The road to the farm went back to being just a road again, not a watch point. For the first time in months, the nights felt safe. Claire eased into the rhythm of the farm, like she had always been meant to. She still worked long hours, still took calls that pulled her into another world, but she did not disappear into it anymore. She learned the land, learned the cattle, learned which fence posts always leaned after a storm and which fields caught the best light at sunset. She listened more than she spoke, and when she did speak, people listened. We never had a moment where we sat down and labeled what we were. We did not need to. It showed in the way she left a mug out for me every morning, in the way I checked my phone less because everything I needed was already here, in the way the house slowly changed without either of us planning it. Her books on the shelf, her jacket on the chair, her laughter filling spaces that had been quiet for too long. One evening, months later, we walked the edge of the property where the wheat rolled like waves in the wind. Claire stopped and said she had been thinking about her grandfather, about the will, about how much fear had shaped her life before she came here. She said she did not want to build anything from fear anymore. Not a company, not a marriage, not a future. She wanted choice. I told her I chose her, not because of a deal or a fight we survived, but because every day with her felt honest. Because when things broke, we fixed them together. Because loving her felt like standing on solid ground. She did not answer right away. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. Her hands shook. Just a little. She said she did not want another courthouse memory to be the only one we had. She wanted something real, something chosen. She asked me if I would marry her again. This time for us. I said yes before she finished the question. We did not plan anything big. We did not need to. The ceremony happened right there on the farm, under the wide Nebraska sky. Neighbors brought chairs. Someone strung lights between fence posts. The judge smiled like he already knew the ending. Claire wore a simple dress that moved with the wind. I wore clean boots and a heart that finally felt steady. When we spoke our vows, there was no pressure, no audience we had to convince. Just truth. We promised to stand when things burned, to stay when it was easier to run, to choose each other, even when fear tried to speak louder. Now, when we sit on the porch at night, watching the fields settle into darkness, I think about the day she drove up in that black SUV. She came asking for a husband by tomorrow. She stayed because we found something neither of us expected, a life built not on contracts or survival, but on choice. And that choice feels like home.